I thought I knew what love meant, until the day I discovered that the person I trusted with my entire heart had been living a double life. For 3 years, I believed we were building something beautiful together. For 3 years, I was completely blind to the betrayal happening right under my nose. This is the true story of how I was cheated by the person I loved the most, and how that devastating betrayal became the catalyst for the most important journey of my life. My name is Maya, and 2 years ago, I was living what I thought was the perfect love story. I had met David during my final year of college. He was charming, attentive, and had this incredible way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We shared everything, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. He was studying business while I was finishing my degree in graphic design. We spent countless nights talking until sunrise, planning the life we were going to build together. David would look into my eyes and tell me I was his soulmate, his forever person. And I believed every single word. After graduation, we moved in together to a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I remember how he would surprise me with my favorite coffee every morning before work, how he'd leave little notes in my lunch bag telling me how much he loved me. Our friends called us the perfect couple, and honestly, I thought they were right. Trust wasn't something I had to work at with David. It came as naturally as breathing. When he said he was working late, I never questioned it. When he went out with his college friends, I encouraged it. I had never been the jealous type, and with David, I never felt I had reason to be. But looking back now, I realized the signs were there long before I was ready to see them. It started small, those little inconsistencies that you brush off when you're in love. David began working later and later, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. His explanations were always reasonable: big project deadlines, demanding clients, networking events that ran long. His phone, which had always been casually left on counters and tables, suddenly became an extension of his hand. He started taking calls in the other room, claiming it was boring work stuff I wouldn't want to hear about. When we watched movies together, his phone would buzz constantly with text messages that made him smile in ways that should have been reserved for me. The emotional distance crept in so gradually that I almost didn't notice. Our morning coffees became rushed affairs. The sweet notes in my lunch bag stopped appearing. Our conversations, once deep and meaningful, became surface-level exchanges about groceries and bills. When I tried to bring up my concerns, David had a way of turning it around, making me feel like I was being paranoid or clingy. "You're being insecure, Maya," he'd say with that same charming smile that had won my heart. "You know I love you. Work is just crazy right now, but things will get back to normal soon." And I wanted to believe him so desperately that I silenced the growing unease in my chest. I told myself that all relationships go through rough patches, that his behavior was just stress from his new promotion at work. I even started questioning my own instincts, wondering if I was becoming one of those needy girlfriends I'd always promised myself I'd never be. The lies became more elaborate. Weekend business trips that seemed to multiply. Conference calls during our date nights that couldn't be postponed. New female colleagues whose names came up more and more frequently in his conversations. Emma from marketing. Jessica from the client services team. And then there was Amanda, Amanda, who seemed to require an unusual amount of David's attention. Amanda, who had great ideas that David would discuss with an enthusiasm he no longer showed for anything involving me. The night everything changed started like any other. David said he was working late again, another emergency client meeting that couldn't wait until morning. I had been feeling particularly lonely that week, so I decided to surprise him at his office with his favorite dinner from the Italian place we used to go to when we first started dating. I drove through the rain, excited about the surprise, imagining his face when I showed up with food and maybe we could recapture some of that spark we'd been missing. But when I arrived at his office building, the parking garage was nearly empty. The security guard told me that most people had left hours ago. My heart began to race, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was at a different location. Maybe the meeting was at a restaurant. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation. But as I sat in my car in that empty garage, something inside me knew that the foundation of my life was about to crumble. I called his phone, straight to voicemail. I sent a text asking where he was. No response. For the first time in 3 years, I did something I had never done before. I drove to the bar where his college friends usually hung out, hoping to find him there, hoping for any explanation that would make sense. He wasn't there either. But Marcus, his best friend from college, was. And the look on Marcus's face when he saw me told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. "Maya," he said, and his voice was heavy with guilt and pity. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for David," I said, though my voice sounded strange and distant to my own ears. "He's supposed to be at work, but..." Marcus looked around the bar nervously, then back at me. "Maya, I think you need to know something. David isn't working late tonight. He hasn't been working late most of these nights." The truth came tumbling out in fragments that cut through me like glass. Amanda wasn't just a colleague. She was David's girlfriend, had been for over a year. The business trips were romantic getaways. The late nights were dates. The conference calls were intimate conversations with her. David had been living 2 completely separate lives, and I had been nothing more than the comfortable routine he came home to. I don't remember driving home that night. I don't remember walking up the stairs to our apartment. But I remember sitting on our couch, the same couch where we'd planned our future together, holding my phone and staring at David's contact information. When he finally came home at 2 a.m., I was still sitting there in the dark. He turned on the lights and saw me, and for just a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw guilt, panic, and something that looked almost like relief flash across his face. "We need to talk," I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. What followed was the most devastating conversation of my life. David tried to lie at first, then minimize, then justify. He said he'd fallen out of love with me but didn't know how to end things. He said Amanda understood him in ways I never could. He said he'd been planning to tell me, that he never meant for it to go on so long, that he was sorry I had to find out this way. But what hurt most wasn't the cheating itself, it was the realization of how effortlessly he had deceived me. Every "I love you" while he was texting her. Every kiss goodbye before he went to meet her. Every night he came home to me after being with her. the person I had trusted with my deepest vulnerabilities had been systematically betraying that trust for over a year. "Did you ever love me?" I asked him, and I genuinely didn't know what answer I wanted to hear. "I did," he said, and for the first time that night, I believed he was telling the truth. "But I fell in love with someone else, and I was too much of a coward to be honest with you." That night, David packed his things and left. I found out later that he moved in with Amanda immediately. Apparently, they'd been planning it for months. Our 3-year relationship ended not with the explosive confrontation I'd imagined, but with the quiet closing of a door and the sound of his car pulling away from our building for the last time. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I felt like I was mourning not just the relationship, but the person I had thought David was. I questioned everything: my judgment, my worth, my ability to ever trust again. I wondered how someone could share a bed with me while being in love with someone else. I wondered what was wrong with me that I hadn't been enough to keep him faithful. But slowly, with the help of therapy and the incredible support of my real friends and family, I began to understand something crucial. David's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his character, his choices, and his inability to be honest about his feelings. I started to see that the person I had been grieving, the David who left me sweet notes and called me his soulmate, had been at least partially a performance. The real David was someone who could compartmentalize his life so completely that he could betray the person who loved him most without losing sleep over it. And as painful as that realization was, it was also liberating. I hadn't lost the love of my life. I had escaped a relationship with someone who was fundamentally incapable of the kind of love I deserved. I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I moved to a new apartment, one that was entirely mine. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my relationship. I started taking art classes again, rediscovering parts of myself that I had lost somewhere in trying to be the perfect girlfriend. Today, 2 years later, I can honestly say that David's betrayal was one of the most painful but necessary experiences of my life. It taught me that my worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. It showed me the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who actually knows how to love you. And it proved to me that I am stronger and more resilient than I ever knew. If you're watching this because you've experienced a similar betrayal, I want you to know that the pain you're feeling right now is not permanent. The person who cheated on you didn't break you. They revealed their own brokenness. Your capacity to love deeply and trust completely isn't a weakness. It's one of your greatest strengths. You deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not someone who treats you like a backup plan while they explore other options. And until that person comes along, you have the most important relationship of all, the one with yourself. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and resilience, and let me know in the comments, have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to your growth? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, your courage to love again is not naive, it's revolutionary.